I walked into the classroom, my heart beating fast. It was my first day in an American school, and I was afraid. The teacher smiled at me. "Class, this is Jane. She is new here and learning English. Let's all make her feel welcome." The students looked at me. Some smiled, but others whispered to each other. My hands felt cold. The teacher asked me to introduce myself. I took a deep breath and tried to speak. Hello, name is Jane." Some students giggled. I felt my face turn red. I am from France," I said slowly. I knew I made a mistake, but I didn't know how to fix it. The teacher nodded, but I could hear whispers behind me. One boy in the back laughed and said something to his friend. My stomach hurt. I wanted to disappear. The class continued, but I could not understand anything. The teacher wrote something on the board, and students answered quickly. Their words sounded fast and confusing. My brain felt slow. Then the teacher called my name. "Jane, can you answer this?" My heart stopped. I froze. I had no idea what the question was. The room was silent. Everyone was looking at me. My hands started shaking. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. My mind was empty. After a few seconds, the teacher smiled and moved on to another student. I sighed in relief, but inside I felt ashamed. At lunchtime, I walked to the cafeteria, hoping no one would talk to me. I sat at a table in the corner and looked at my food. Suddenly, I heard a voice. "Hey, Jane, do you want to sit with us?" I looked up. A girl with bright green eyes and a big smile was waving at me. "I'm Emily," she said. "Come sit with us." I felt nervous, but I didn't want to be alone. I picked up my tray and walked to her table. "Hi," I said quietly. "Nice to meet you." Emily smiled. "Nice to meet you too. Don't worry, your English will get better." She spoke slowly so I could understand. The other students at the table asked me questions, and even though I made many mistakes, they helped me. For the first time today, I laughed. After lunch, I walked to my next class, feeling a little better. But just as I turned the corner, I bumped into someone, hard. My tray fell to the floor, and milk spilled all over my shirt. The hallway went silent. Then I heard a boy's voice. "Wow, the new girl doesn't just speak bad English, she's also clumsy." Laughter exploded around me. My face burned. I wanted to run away. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. My first day had been a disaster. I felt stupid, embarrassed, and alone. But one thing was clear. I had to get better at English. I couldn't go through another day like this. The next morning, I didn't want to go to school. My shirt was still stained from yesterday's accident, and I couldn't forget the laughter in the hallway. I kept thinking about the boy who made fun of me. His name was Daniel, and he was one of the most popular students in class. I knew that if I made another mistake today, he would laugh again. But I had no choice. I had to go. I walked into class and sat in my seat quietly, hoping no one would notice me. The teacher came in and smiled. "Good morning, class. Today, we are going to do something fun. Everyone will stand up and talk about their favorite hobby for 1 minute." My heart dropped. A presentation? I could barely say a sentence in English. And now I had to talk in front of everyone. The teacher continued. "Don't worry. This is just for practice. You don't have to be perfect. Just try your best." One by one, students stood up and spoke. Emily went first. "I love painting," she said. "It makes me feel calm and happy." She spoke so easily, with no fear. Then it was Daniel's turn. He stood up with confidence. "My favorite hobby is soccer," he said. "I play every weekend, and I'm the best player on my team." The class laughed at his joke. He looked so comfortable, as if speaking English was the easiest thing in the world. I wished I could be like that. Then the teacher looked at me. "Jane, your turn." My hands were shaking as I stood up. I took a deep breath. I can do this. Just 1 minute. I tried to think of something simple. My hobby, I like read book, I said slowly. A few students smiled, but I could hear Daniel whispering behind me. She likes read book, he said, mocking my words. Maybe she should read English book first. The class burst into laughter. I felt like I was going to cry. My face was hot, my hands were cold, and I wanted to run out of the room. I tried to finish my sentence, but the words wouldn't come out. The teacher noticed my discomfort and quickly said, "Great job, Jane. You're doing very well." I sat down fast, wishing the ground would swallow me. After class, I went straight to the bathroom and locked myself in a stall. Tears filled my eyes. I'll never speak good English. Everyone thinks I'm stupid. I didn't know how to fix this problem. How could I ever be confident if I kept making mistakes? I thought about skipping school tomorrow, but then I heard a voice outside the bathroom. "Jane?" It was Emily. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. I wiped my tears quickly and opened the door. I not good, I admitted. I can't speak English. Emily smiled. "You're learning, and I can help you." I looked at her, surprised. "Really?" She nodded. "Let's practice together after school." For the first time all day, I felt a little hope. Maybe I wasn't alone after all. After school, Emily and I walked to the school library. I had never been there before because I was too scared to talk to people, but today was different. Emily said she would help me learn English, and for the first time, I felt a little hope. We found a quiet corner and sat down. Emily placed an English book on the table. "Okay, Jane," she said. "The best way to learn English is to speak every day. We will practice together." I felt nervous. "But I make too many mistakes," I said softly. Emily smiled. "It's okay. Mistakes are how you learn. Just try." She pointed to a simple sentence in the book. "The cat is on the table. Read this," she said. I looked at the words and tried. "The cat is, on the table." My voice was shaky, but I did it. "Great job," Emily said, clapping. I felt a little proud. We practiced more sentences. Sometimes I said the wrong words and Emily helped me fix them. Sometimes I forgot a word, but she encouraged me. After an hour, I felt a little more confident. Maybe I could learn English after all. Then Emily had an idea. "Let's go to the coffee shop across the street," she said. "You will order in English." My eyes widened in fear. No, I can't," I said quickly. "Yes, you can," she laughed. "I will be with you. Just say, 1 coffee, please." I shook my head, but Emily pulled me up. "Come on, no more fear." At the coffee shop, my heart was pounding. We stood in line, and my hands were sweating. Emily smiled. "You can do this, Jane." The cashier looked at me. "What can I get for you?" I opened my mouth, but no words came out. My mind was blank. I tried again. I want, coffee, please?" The cashier nodded. "Small, medium, or large?" I didn't understand. My face turned red. Emily whispered, "Say medium." I nodded quickly. "Medium." The cashier smiled. "Great, that'll be $3. I froze again. I didn't understand the number. Emily saw my confusion and held up 3 fingers. "Oh," I said, and gave the money. As we walked out, I exhaled deeply. "That was so scary," I said. Emily laughed. "But you did it." She was right. It was not perfect, but I had spoken English to a stranger. I felt a little stronger. Maybe if I kept trying, I could get better. But as we walked back to school, I heard a familiar voice behind me. Wow, the new girl finally learned 1 sentence. It was Daniel. He and his friends laughed. My face turned hot again. Just when I thought I was doing better, he made me feel small again. I clenched my fists. Would I ever be good enough? I felt my stomach tighten as Daniel and his friends laughed behind me. My heart pounded, and my face turned red. I wanted to ignore them, but their words stayed in my mind. She finally learned one sentence, Daniel said, smirking. His friends chuckled. I clenched my fists. I was tired of feeling small. I had worked hard today. I had spoken English. I had tried. But no matter what I did, Daniel always made fun of me. I looked at Emily. She gave me a reassuring nod. "Don't listen to him, Jane," she whispered. But I knew I couldn't stay silent forever. That night, I sat in my room, thinking about what to do. I wanted to prove that I wasn't weak. I wanted to show Daniel and myself that I could learn English. But how? I opened my notebook and started writing down English sentences. I looked up words I didn't know. I practiced saying them out loud. "I am learning English," I whispered to myself. "I will not give up." I practiced speaking into my phone, listening to my own voice. I hated how I sounded, but I kept going. I made flashcards of new words and repeated them again and again. For the first time, I wasn't just scared. I was determined. The next day at school, I felt a little stronger. Emily met me before class and smiled. "How do you feel?" she asked. I took a deep breath. "Better," I said, trying to sound confident. In English class, the teacher made an announcement. "Tomorrow we will have a speaking contest. Each student will stand in front of the class and talk about any topic they like for 1 minute." My heart stopped. A speaking contest? In front of everyone? My hands started shaking again. What if I froze? What if I messed up? Then I looked at Daniel, sitting in the back of the class, grinning. I knew he was waiting for me to fail. But this time, I had a plan. That evening, I went to Emily's house. "I want to prepare for the contest," I told her. She looked surprised but happy. "That's great. What do you want to talk about?" I thought for a moment. Then an idea hit me. "I want to talk about something important," I said. "I want to talk about learning English." Emily clapped her hands. "Perfect. You can tell them about your experience. Everyone will relate to it." I nodded. It was the only thing I truly knew how to talk about. We spent hours practicing. I wrote down simple sentences and read them out loud. Emily helped me with my pronunciation. I made mistakes, but I kept going. I stood in front of the mirror and spoke to myself. I imagined standing in class, looking at Daniel, proving him wrong. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt something new. It wasn't fear, it was determination. Tomorrow, I would stand up and speak. I would show everyone, including myself, that I could do this. The next morning, I walked into class, feeling nervous but ready. Today was the speaking contest, and I had spent the whole night practicing my speech. I knew I would make mistakes, but I didn't care anymore. I just wanted to try my best. The classroom was buzzing with excitement. Some students were relaxed, while others were practicing their speeches quietly. My hands felt cold and sweaty, but I kept repeating my words in my head. "I can do this. I can do this." The teacher stood in front of the class. "All right, everyone, let's begin. Remember, this is just for fun. You don't have to be perfect. Just try your best." I swallowed hard. I wasn't sure if this would be fun, but I knew I had to do it. One by one, students went up and spoke about different topics. Some talked about sports, some about music, and others about their families. Then it was Daniel's turn. He walked up confidently, flashing his usual smirk. "My topic is why I'm the best at soccer," he said, and the class laughed. He spoke clearly and without fear, moving his hand as he talked. When he finished, everyone clapped loudly. I could feel my stomach tighten. How could I go after him? Then the teacher called my name. "Jane, you're up!" The room fell silent. I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of every eye on me. As I walked to the front, I saw Daniel whispering to his friend. He was waiting for me to fail. I took a deep breath and looked at Emily. She gave me a small nod of encouragement. I faced the class. My hands were shaking, but I opened my mouth and began to speak. "My name is Jane," I said, my voice soft but steady. "I want to talk about learning English." I could hear some sneakers from the back, but I ignored them. "When I first come here, I not speak English. Well," I paused, my heart racing. Did I say that right? Should I stop? Then I remembered what Emily told me. Just keep going. I took another breath. I scared. People laugh at me. But I try. I practice every day. I glanced at Emily. She was smiling. The class was still listening. No one was laughing anymore. I felt a little braver. "Yesterday I ordered coffee. First time," I said, smiling a little. "It was hard, but I did it." A few students nodded and smiled. Even the teacher looked proud. I took one last breath. I know, my English, not perfect. But I will not stop. One day I will speak very well. The room was silent for a moment. Then someone clapped. It was Emily. Then another student, and another. Suddenly the whole class was clapping for me. Even the teacher. I felt tears in my eyes. But this time, they weren't from sadness. They were from happiness. I had done it. I had spoken in English. I had proved to myself that I could do it. But then I looked at Daniel. He wasn't clapping. He was just staring at me, his face unreadable. What was he thinking? As I walked back to my seat, my heart was still beating fast. The class was clapping for me, something I never imagined would happen. I had done it. I had spoken in English, and people had actually listened. I felt light, relieved, proud. But when I sat down, my eyes landed on Daniel. He wasn't clapping. He wasn't laughing either. He was just staring at me, his expression unreadable. At lunch, Emily and I sat together, still talking about the speech. "Jane, you were amazing," she said, grinning. "Everyone saw how hard you've worked. Even the teacher was impressed." I smiled, feeling warm inside. But before I could say anything, I heard a voice behind me. "Hey." I turned around and froze. It was Daniel. I expected him to mock me again, to say something mean. But his face looked different. There was no smirk, no arrogance. Instead, he looked almost nervous. "Can I sit here?" he asked. Emily looked surprised, but she nodded. I didn't know what to say, so I just shrugged. Daniel sat down and stared at his hands for a moment before speaking. I wanted to say, you did good today." My eyes widened. Was this really happening? I had never expected Daniel to say something nice. "I mean, your English isn't perfect," he added quickly, "but you tried, and that's cool." I wasn't sure if this was a compliment, but I took it as one. "Thank you," I said quietly. There was an awkward silence before Daniel sighed. "Listen, I know I've been kinda mean to you." He rubbed the back of his neck. "It's just, I understand what it feels like." Emily and I exchanged glances. "What do you mean?" I asked. Daniel hesitated. Then he looked at me and said something I never expected. "I wasn't born here. I moved to the US when I was 7. And guess what? I didn't speak a word of English either." I froze. "Daniel? The boy who laughed at me? The one who made me feel small? He had once been like me? When I was a kid," he continued, "people made fun of me too. I messed up words all the time. I felt stupid. He looked down at his food. So I decided to be the one laughing first. That way, no one could laugh at me. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. I had always seen Daniel as the bully, the confident one, but now I saw him as someone who had been hurt too. My anger faded a little. "You don't have to do that anymore," I said. My voice was calm but firm. "You don't have to make others feel small." Daniel looked at me, then smirked. "You're tougher than you look, Jane." He stood up, grabbing his tray. "See you around." As he walked away, I felt lighter. He hadn't apologized, but I knew he understood now, and that was enough. That night, as I practiced English again, I felt stronger than ever. Not just because I was learning, but because I had proved to myself, and to Daniel, that I wouldn't give up. The next morning, I felt different. For the first time since moving to this country, I wasn't just afraid of speaking English. I was excited to try. After what happened with Daniel, I realized something important. Everyone struggles, but the only way to improve is to keep going. At lunch, Emily sat next to me and grinned. "So, what's next?" she asked. "You've spoken in class, faced Daniel, and ordered coffee. Now, it's time for the real challenge." I raised an eyebrow. "What challenge?" Emily smirked. "You need to have a real conversation with a stranger. No help from me. No pointing at menus. Just you, your words, and someone new." My stomach tightened. A real conversation? That sounded terrifying. But I knew Emily was right. If I wanted to speak English fluently, I had to push myself. After school, we walked to a bookstore downtown. Emily chose this place because it was quiet, and I wouldn't feel too pressured. "Okay, Jane," she said. "You need to ask a store worker for help. Just a simple question. You got this." I took a deep breath and walked up to a worker stacking books on a shelf. He looked up and smiled. "Hi, do you need help?" For a second, I froze. The words were in my head, but they wouldn't come out. Then I remembered what Emily told me. Just try. Yes," I said slowly. "I look for book about travel." The worker nodded. "Oh, travel books? Sure. Follow me." He led me to a section filled with colorful books about different countries. "Do you need a book about any specific place?" I thought for a second. Paris," I said. He pulled a book from the shelf and handed it to me. "Here's a great one about Paris. Anything else?" I looked down at the book in my hands. I had done it. I had just spoken to a stranger in English, and he understood me. I smiled and shook my head. "No, thank you." As I walked back to Emily, she was clapping silently. "Jane, you just had a full conversation," she said excitedly. "No mistakes, no panic. You did it!" I laughed, feeling proud. "It was not perfect," I admitted. "But it was real," Emily said, "and that's what matters." For the first time, I truly believed I could do this. Do you feel nervous when speaking English? Just like Jane, the only way to improve is to keep trying. Start small, order food, ask for directions, or talk to a friend. Mistakes don't matter. What matters is that you try. Now, tell me in the comments what was the scariest moment you had while speaking English. Let's share our experiences and learn together. If you like this story, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more fun English learning stories. See you in the next video.